This is House Planning Help, episode 30. Hello, I'm Ben Adam Smith, and this is the podcast for you if you're looking into self-building or renovating. We explore what houses we should be building in the 21st century. My own personal goal alongside this is to create an energy-efficient home by August 2016. Coming up in this session, my guest is Mark Wilson from buildingdesignexpert.com. We'll be looking at how you specify sustainable materials for your projects. Very happy to make it to 30 episodes, 30 podcasts, and you really do keep me motivated. Thank you for all the iTunes reviews. It's brilliant. Let me read out a few of them. This left in the New Zealand iTunes store from, is it eShops or eShops? Unfortunately, it doesn't have names. It just has code names there. If you're thinking of building or renovating, listen to this. Great show with important home building topics presented in a very easy to understand manner. Ben cuts through the jargon and asks the experts the questions you'd like to ask. All presented in a professionally produced show. Thank you. Cutting through the jargon. You know, sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Sometimes it's just, more technical terms. Also, Daldinha. This is in the UK store. Refreshing and inspirational is the title of this review. Considered and informative, an outstanding podcast for those interested or concerned with modern construction options. Great interviews with top industry professionals from the environmentally conscious building world. Refreshing and inspirational, well done so far and keep up the good work. And Alan Budd, who I do put my hands up, I know Alan. Great series worth joining iTunes for. Ben has a way with words and is really getting to the bottom of low energy housing. As a certified passive house designer, I would recommend this to my clients so that they can learn more about passive house, and it's certainly a topic that I want to keep on learning more about. So thank you if you've left a rating, but if not and you're willing to do it, maybe even pause the podcast right now and go ahead and do that. I'd love that, particularly if you're one of our American or Canadian listeners, because I was taking a look in the iTunes store over there and we have no reviews. So that means people won't find us, and any reviews, good or bad, hopefully will climb us up the ranks there and allow more people to find this content. So that will be fantastic. Still to come in this episode, I want to tell you about our latest Google Plus Hangout, which we held on the topic of housing density, but we're going to do that after today's main content. And I must say a big thank you to Jeremy Murfitt for suggesting this topic on how we procure green materials. So I've gone to Mark Wilson from buildingdesignexpert.com for some answers, and I started by asking him for a little bit of background on his career in construction.
Okay, well, I'm right as of this moment, so I'm a chartered architectural technologist. I haven't always been so because the chartership for our professional institute was only invented a few years ago. But I started life as an architectural technician back in 1985. I think I joined the institute, so a good few years ago. And basically since then I've worked in architects' offices, developers' offices, contractors' offices as a technical architectural type, producing drawings and details, designing the odd building, the extensions, refurbishments of buildings. What more can I tell you?
We're calling this episode Specifying for a Sustainable Future, but I'd quite like to know what that actually means, your definition of sustainability, and what do we mean when we say specifying?
Oh, no, you've picked one. How long you got, Ben? This sustainability, it's a term that's used by an awful lot of people, to my mind, very incorrectly. Manufacturers, even professionals, tend to refer to a sustainable building or a sustainable product. And let me say right here and now that there is, in my humble opinion, there is no such thing as a sustainable building or product or anything, quite frankly, if it comes down to the minutiae of the argument. Because for something to be sustainable, it must be replaceable at a rate greater than or at least equal to its use. And if you dig a hole out of the ground and start manufacturing bricks with the product of that, i.e. clay, for example, what are you going to do? You're going to put it back and create some more so you can dig it up again. That doesn't work. So sustainability, in my mind, is what people mean when they describe something as sustainable. It's the environment they're describing. Let me go back a bit. Let me first identify a building. If we have a building, the most sustainable building is absolutely no building at all. Everything else is a compromise. So given that starting point, as soon as we start to construct, we're taking materials out of the ground, general resources that the earth has to offer out of the ground. Even water comes out of the ground. It comes from the sky, but we take it out of the ground. So for something to be sustainable, we're looking to sustain as best we can the environment in which we live on this planet, so that we can keep living on it in a manner to which we've become accustomed, if you like, because that is what we're trying to sustain and make sustainable. We can't stop building, we can't stop developing, because this is the way we interact with our planet. But all we've got to do is limit the damage we're doing, limit the carbon that we're creating that is destroying our planet or helping to destroy the planet bit by bit. It sounds a very heavy comment, if you like, but I think that's where the truth lies. And if people are not prepared to accept that, then, well, we have got a mighty big problem. But sustainability, buildings are not sustainable, products are not sustainable. What we're looking to do is sustain our environment, and simple as.
Going back in history, we're obviously not a new species on the planet. When would you say have we started to cause the damage? Is it when we first started building then, logically? Or, because I would say that it does seem in the last century we've done a lot of the damage.
Well, the Romans get an awful lot of credit for stuff, don't they? And I think they should take a bit of the blame here as well, because they started us down the road for all this technological stuff. They invented bricks, they invented building with stone, and the Romans invented concrete. So I think if you want to go back that far, but I mean...
But their buildings are still there.
Absolutely. So you could argue they're sustainable, and they didn't use any energy to create them, not energy as we understand it today, because they didn't have oil and gas and electricity. So the answer to your question, I think, lies in the Industrial Revolution, when we started to use energy big time, and technology is the cause of our problems today. It's the way out. It's going to lead us out of this wilderness that we've got ourselves into. But it's certainly the cause of it, in my mind.
We didn't focus on the word specifying there. Maybe you could explain that one.
Specify, read, identify. We're identifying materials, forms of construction, forms of procurement. If we're talking about a modern day construction project, where we're identifying the route to goal, if you like, for completion of that project, from its very inception and the sketch on the back of the fag packet to opening the door on day one and letting the occupants in. The specification process involves identifying the most economic, the most sustainable, can I use that word, sustainable? I've just described it as something we shouldn't use, but the most sustainable way in environmental terms that we can construct that project, and every little bit that goes into it, that is part of specifying a project.
So are we saying here that when we're looking at sustainability in this respect, almost everything you do has an impact, even if that's your builders turning up on the site? Or are we just talking about the materials? Because you could take this down to a minute degree, couldn't you?
Well, you could do, but I think the answer to your question is yes, because as soon as you start, builders turning up on site, they turn up with plant and equipment. They're bringing materials with them to site. Every material has got an embodied carbon content. And I think ultimately manufacturers will have to start divulging their embodied carbon content in terms of the material as it leaves the factory gate. The assessment of then its route to site and everything else to add to that carbon content is going to be have to be calculated separately. But I think manufacturers will have to start giving us an embodied carbon level for materials in order for us to determine their contribution to the sustainability of this project. And again, I refer to, it's not the project that's sustainable, it's its contribution to the sustainability of the environment. So yeah, going back to the contractor issue, yes, the very act of him turning up is contributory.
I don't want to complicate things, but my brain is trying to do that at the moment. So say, for example, that we try and do our best and build this with sustainable materials, but then it only lasts 40 or 50 years. Is that counterproductive?
Well, that's an interesting question. I did my own podcast interview recently with Martin Townsend from the BRE. He's a BREEAM expert. And this subject came up of buildings lasting a finite amount of time. It may be over only 20 years, let alone 30 or 40. But the idea that we should be looking at is that these buildings should be constructed with materials that are ultimately recyclable. So on demolition of that building, all the materials, as far as we can be used in either another way, they have another use, or they can be recycled into a new building. And in fact, I did understand that there's a European country, it might even be Belgium, have actually put forward a proposal which may well come out in the wash in European Parliament terms a few years down the line as far as the UK is concerned. But the proposal being that you can't build a new building until you've identified one that's coming down that you can recycle and use to take its place. So that's a very interesting concept, but recycling is the key.
Let's take the situation that I'm in. I'm looking to either build or to retrofit a property, and I want it to be more sustainable. So what responsibility do I have, or is it really the people that I hire to do all the work, that have all the skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the client has got to take responsibility for the end product, and I think they're there. If you're going to employ a design professional to design your house for you, then I think you should initially take the lead in saying, I want this to be the smallest carbon footprint that we can possibly build, given the constraints of the site, where it is, planning regulations, budget is also going to influence it. There's all sorts of, I said at the start that no building is the only sustainable building, everything else is a compromise, and there are always compromises within that compromise as well, because there are so many parameters and constraints within which you will be designing, so you cannot possibly tick all boxes.
So where can we be most sustainable? Is it in the products, or I'm just wondering whether we should be focusing on a particular area or just in all areas as we go along? It just seems a bit vague then.
It does, but I mean, again, if I was to say to you, you could be, I could give you a sort of a tick box list and say you can be more sustainable if you use recycled products. So if you were able to go to an architectural reclamation yard, if your checkbook allowed that, you can get some beautiful second-hand, effectively, demolition reclaim products and build them into your new building. And they will look fantastic if they're done in the right way with the right sort of professional help. So that is being very kind to the environment, very eco-friendly. And if you must buy new products, have a look at the products with the least embodied energy. How much energy, for example, looking at concrete blocks, how much energy does it take to manufacture a concrete block? I mean, they've got to be burnt at very high temperatures in a kiln, so that uses sort of fossil fuel. But then the materials we dig out the ground, cement, for example, takes a huge amount of energy to manufacture cement. And cement is an intrinsic into the content of a concrete block. So, or some concrete blocks anyway. So I think the specification of materials like that needs to have a careful look at embodied energy, because if we can get that down, we can reduce the carbon contribution of that building to the planet. I mean, you could go on, you could go into water harvesting, insulation levels. All those are major contributors to reducing energy in use. It's not just the building in construction, it's the building in use. It's the whole life cycle of the building that we're talking about and considering here. Even down to demolition, you mentioned this earlier, that should we need to demolish the building at some stage in the future, and who knows, then the constituent materials should be recyclable. And if they're not, why not? Think again.
One more question on this, and that is, if we do the right thing, is it likely to cost us? Are we, as clients, going to have to bear the brunt of this if we want to create a more sustainable future?
Yes and no. It doesn't have to. If you've got time, if you can research what you want to do, and I'm speaking to the self-builder now, if you can look into the background of the materials and even come up with your own specification, if you like, what you're going to use, how you're going to use it, and where. Just learn a bit of the process of building and design in conjunction with your appointed design professional, by all means, and he or she will hopefully help you down that road. So there is no reason really why it should cost you more if you're willing to do a bit of work and research beforehand, like obtaining recycled materials. But make no mistake, quality materials will always cost money. If you want a lead roof, that lead roof will last 100 years. But it'll be blinking expensive to get up there. But you won't have to do anything to it. They don't really need maintaining. You might have to have a look at it every 20 years or so, to just make sure that it's not sort of peeling away at the corner or something. But there again, you might have somebody come up and help themselves to it one evening while you're away on holiday. So it's a tricky one, isn't it? Quality materials will always cost money. That's just the way of the world. So it depends whether you want to draw the line on the quality of the material or its performance. I'm just trying to differentiate that one in my own head now, because I know what the difference is. It's a fine line, but a quality material doesn't necessarily mean it's going to perform better. You might buy something for its looks, for example, which might make it more expensive, but it might not make it perform any better.
Is there any question that I should be asking you, or any area of this episode that perhaps we can tag on the end there? Or have we looked at it quite well?
What I think I started to refer to in perhaps the answer to the last question was that in terms of recyclability, embodied energy, we should also be looking to minimise use of resources. So renewable technology in terms of rainwater harvesting, for example, that is a fantastic no-brain decision that every new house builder, certainly self-builder, should be looking to make. Now, some of these this sort of falls in line with your previous question in terms of cost, because installing a rainwater harvesting tank and the pumping gear and storage that goes with it inside the new building has a capital expenditure over and above what you'd normally do in just piping your rainwater pipes into the local surface water sewer, assuming the local water authority allowed you to do so. But the saving on water over the lifespan of the building will be huge. Water is just one of those things. Have you looked at your water bill recently? It's frightening. I looked at the renewal came through for ours a few weeks ago, and wow, that's more than last year, and last year was expensive. So water is one of those things, one of those natural resources that we just use in this country willy-nilly. But if you think about it, current projected figures say from here to 2030, so we're only going 18 years into the future, 17 years into the future, there's going to be another 14 million people in this country, not in Europe, or in this country, and we won't have any more water. The water levels don't increase with the population. We've still got the same rivers and reservoirs and what have you. So that's just one to think on. That a natural resource that we take very much for granted is getting more expensive, and like gas and electricity, it's going to continue on that upward curve.
Well, Mark, thank you for everything today. It has been fantastic, but I know that you've got your own website and podcast. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. Buildingdesignexpert.com. It's a free information hub resource, primarily to the construction industry professional, if I'm honest, but there's no reason why the avid DIY self-builder shouldn't drop by and get something out of that. There's all sorts of information on there. What I do, the premise of the website, is to pull together information that you might find on 20 different websites, but it's all on one. So it becomes a one-stop shop. You can go there for information on building information modelling, on planning, on building regulations. I blog on it every other week. I now do a podcast on it every other week. There's an event calendar for construction industry events. I trawl the internet and list all the construction industry events. It takes a huge amount of time. I haven't got a clue why I do it. I used to have a life, but not anymore. But no, it's been very well received, and it's getting a stronger and stronger following. And like I say, all the information is there for free, because I know people like free. I know people don't like paying for stuff, so I'll just accept that and get on with it. There's lots of downloads in terms of PDFs and what have you. Go along, buildingdesignexpert.com, take a look, and if you like it, come back.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate that, and maybe speak to you again sometime.
Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for having me along.
You can find out more about Mark in today's show notes. There'll also be all the links that we've mentioned as well, houseplanninghelp.com/30. Plus our question for the comments section that we have at the bottom of that page. What materials are you going to use on your build and why? I'd love to hear your experience, or perhaps it's something else from the episode that you want to comment upon. For me, the big surprise of that episode was actually not on that topic, but just at the end when Mark started talking about water. And I was doing some video work at the AECB conference earlier in the summer. The theme of that whole conference was on water. And perhaps I was a little bit caught up in my video stuff, and I know that a lot of the content, when I did have a chance to sit down and take a look at some of the seminars, it went a little bit over my head. But I just don't think I grasp, why are we talking about water? Are there not bigger issues that we should be discussing? I think I now grasp it. The penny has dropped, so that is definitely another topic for the lists at some stage, along with the many others that I'm hoping to attend to. But I get the feeling that population growth as well, it's a big issue, isn't it? It's going to speed everything up as we get more people on the planet. And are there actually any benefits with a growing population? I can't think of many at the moment, so some bigger issues there. two more things that I want to mention before we finish up today, and one of them is a video idea that I have. I'm very keen to follow a build from conception all the way through to finishing, and it would make sense given what most of our content has been about, that it's a passive house project. But this is really, I suppose, only relevant to you if you're in the southeast of England, because there's a big benefit of covering a project close to where I live in Hertford in the UK. So I've been researching that. I put an article on the blog and I got a couple of people coming forward to me, James Burton and Alex Baines. I've had a chat with both of them. I think what they're doing is fantastic, but it's still a little bit further away than I would like it to be, because this project, my idea for funding it, because it might be over a 6 or 9 month period, possibly even a year. So it's a big project and I want to break down a build into little segments. It's going to be me asking a lot of questions, I know. I'm doing a similar thing, just gathering some footage almost. There's a couple who are doing a build at the moment that they've allowed me access onto their build, and I'm collecting what I call stock footage for the House Planning Help library so that it can help me illustrate different things. But I find when I go down there, I just end up asking questions, and when you ask one question, it just leads on to the next question. So that's what this would be about, but I try to define it beforehand, each different video, keep the videos as short as I possibly can and try and make them as clear as possible. But that's the big plan and something that I would like to do in the coming months. And I've thought of another way that, because this would be crowd-funded, that I could even go one step further and try and crowdfund a build and almost have it as a TV set. Because that's the other aspect. When you go and start asking questions, you slow them down in their job. I can see it happening, and I want to ask the questions, but then I think I'm actually pulling you away from what you should be doing. This is definitely a project I'm going to get off the ground at some point. It may take a while to get sorted, but if you are listening and thinking, oh, I live close to Hertford, or this might work out, you're exactly the person that I want to speak to and see if it might work, or I'm going to try and find a way to make it happen. But if you want to find out more about this idea, because I've put it in writing in more detail on the website, if this does apply to you, houseplanninghelp.com/video idea. But I think it would be some really valuable content that would help us all, particularly if you're going down this route too. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention was the Google Plus Hangout that we held a few days ago. Big thank you to Matthew Cutler-Welsh, Philippa Richard and Ben Scheidler, all parts of the world, New Zealand, Canada, here in London too. So it was fantastic to get you guys together and talking on the topic of, should we be optimising housing density for a sustainable future? You can watch that video, it's on our YouTube channel, and again, everything links in from the show notes, so you'll find it on there, houseplanninghelp.com/30. I want to hold 2 more Google Plus Hangouts in 2013, so if you're one of our subscribers on the email newsletter, I'll announce what the next topic will be soon if you want to take part. You don't have to be an expert. We like some experts on the panel, but you just need to have an opinion. That's the way it works. It's getting people involved and talking on some of these important issues. We're actually going to stick on that topic next time. I hope that this interview might come out before the Google Plus Hangout, but it didn't work that way. So we'll be catching up with architect, planner and author Graham Towers. He's going to be my next guest. I hope you can join me for that when we talk housing density.